I recognize Honorable Member, Shadow Minister of Finance.
Before we begin, I'd first like to extend a pleasant good morning to you, Madam President, as well as, of course, my colleagues sitting beside me and the members opposite. I'd also like to welcome those in attendance to this year's sitting of the Youth Parliament. Madam President, as I sat there listening to the leader opposite speak, I couldn't help but to be somewhat impressed. As a matter of fact, when he was concluded with his performance, I was even inclined to share a brief round of applause. But I was amazed, Madam President. I was amazed at the fact that a grown man could stand there so confidently and try to convince a room full of intelligent people that an amendment so distasteful, so impractical, should be considered anywhere near the island of Nevis. As opposition leader, my purpose here this morning is simple. Me and my colleagues have come in an attempt to liberate the people of Nevis from the foul plague of propaganda that I expect the 8 individuals sitting opposite me to try and spread. In simple terms, we've come to reveal the truth. In doing so, Madam President, I'll first begin with a brief review of the proposed amendment. The initial environmental levy charged $3,500 for vehicles older than 2 years old and less than 4 years old, as you may have heard earlier. The new levy is seeking to increase that amount to $5,000. In the case of vehicles over 4 years old, however, the initial levy charged $5,000. This new one is seeking to charge the people of Nevis $7,500, which is, of course, in addition to the other importation taxes that they'll be subjected to. According to the dear members of government, this is in some sort of heroic attempt to save the world from the scourge of carbon emissions emanating from our vehicles. However, Madam President, this is where the statistics begin to speak. Because according to data retrieved from the Oxford University, the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis generates approximately 240,000 tons of CO2 emissions yearly. And don't get me wrong, this may sound like a scary amount until you try it into comparison to a country just south of us, Trinidad and Tobago, which generates about 36 million tons of CO2 emissions yearly. Now, Madam President, these numbers only get more ridiculous when you try to draw comparison on a global scale. For example, if we were to try and figure out how much exactly is our island contributing to the degradation of the Earth's atmosphere, and of course for the people of Nevis to be charged an extra $2,500 to bring in their vehicles, we must assume that it's some gigantic amount. However, through research and after doing the necessary calculations, Madam President, I discovered that in its entirety, the island of Nevis contributes to approximately 0.00003% of global emissions. Now, Madam President, while putting together my presentation, I thought to myself, well, Michael, after you said all of that, you should probably just go back and sit down. For this data clearly proves that this new environmental levy, apart from contributing to making the people of Nevis poorer, will have zero impact on anything essential to the environment. Madam President, in simpler terms, they're trying to tax the people for nothing. But I can't stop there, because going further would reveal that according to data derived from the Worldometer, the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis has the 17th lowest carbon footprint in the world. So, Madam President, the data clearly indicates that the air in St. Kitts and Nevis is clean. It's clean. Apparently, not clean enough for the members on that side. As a matter of fact, Madam President, I wouldn't be surprised if we went outside after this sitting and saw the members opposite with masks on and vacuums in their hand trying to suck up all the dirtiness out of the air. I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised. For if these 8 individuals could stand here this morning with any kind of conviction, and try to convince the people of Nevis that the best thing that could be done for the island, an island whose people are trying their best to recover from a global pandemic, a country whose people are getting blows daily due to the inflation stemming from the issues overseas. If these people could really stand there and try to convince the people of Nevis that the best thing that could be done for them is to charge them more money for absolutely no reason, then tell me, Madam President, what wouldn't they do? As much as the statistics tell a tale, I didn't come here this morning just to relay information that gathered from the internet, sorry. Madam President, as I mentioned earlier, I've come in an attempt to deliver the people of Nevis from this injustice being brought upon them. Any of us could stand here this morning and spew as much data and sources as we want, but I truly believe that if we are unable to resonate with the people of Nevis on a personal level, then it will all be for naught. So I'd like to close with a story or a scenario, perhaps. I want each of us in here to try and picture our local village fisherman or construction worker. For the sake of this activity, we'll call him Mr. Joe. Now, Mr. Joe is just over the age of 40. He's a courteous, helpful, hard-working village man. Every day, Mr. Joe walks down the road to get to his job. He toils all day in the blazing sun. Then he walks back up the road to get home, all in an effort to keep food on the table for his family, of course. What you do not know, however, is that for the past couple of years, Mr. Joe has been trying to save his hard-earned dollars in hopes of one day importing a used pickup truck. Perhaps it's not the most optimal vehicle if you're thinking about the conditions of the birds in the trees, but in Mr. Joe's case, it's the only one he can afford. And as simple as this may seem to us, with this truck, Mr. Joe won't have to bear the burden of walking up and down that dreaded road each day. Who knows? Maybe Mr. Joe has aspirations of one day starting his own construction business. Maybe the truck will make life easier for him while selling his fish. Regardless, to Mr. Joe, this old pickup truck is a life-changing investment. Madam President, I want you to now picture the shock on Mr. Joe's face after sacrificing for years and is right on the brink of importing his pickup truck, just to hear that he's now being forced to pay an extra $2,500. Imagine the pain that Mr. Joe feels inside after realizing that he now has to walk up and down that village road for another couple of months. Madam President, if it's one thing I think we can all agree on in here, is that on the island of Nevis, the air is as clean as the sun is hot. So God forbid, but one day Mr. Joe might just not make it up that road. One day Mr. Joe might just not make it home. Madam President, I close my presentation this morning with a heavy heart because I feel for the people of Nevis. And regardless of what anyone on that side dares to stand there and say this morning, regardless of how confident and bold and brilliant they may pretend to be, it will not stop me from seeing this amendment for what it truly is: a pointless and downright shameful cash grab. Shame on you. Madam President, as I close, if I'm to be completely honest, I am not pleased, but regardless, I hope that I was able to please you this morning. Thank you for your time.
I recognize Honorable Member, Minister of Education.
Madam President, members of the opposition, colleagues and members of the intelligentsia, I bid you a pleasant good morning. Madam President, I would first like to state how grateful I am to be able to stand here today in this House of Assembly to present this white paper on amending the schedule of fees to the Environmental Levy Ordinance for Nevis. This paper draws innovation from the circulated government of Sinkinson Nevis Green Paper on the Environmental Levy Ordinance for the Federation, which highlights the Commonwealth Day theme for 2023, forging a sustainable and peaceful future. This then demonstrates the family of nations' active commitment to promote peace, prosperity, and sustainability, particularly through climate action in order to secure a better future for children and improve the lives of Commonwealth citizens. Madam President, older vehicles are more harmful to the environment because they emit more carbon dioxide than modern vehicles. Now, yes, a used or older vehicle would be much cheaper than a modern vehicle. But Madam President, as the Minister of Information Technology, let's take a look into new and more modern vehicles. According to progressive.com, modern engines are much smarter, smaller, more powerful, and more efficient than older vehicles. This then begs the question, are we going to choose the quantity over the quality of these vehicles? As mentioned, it is more affordable to purchase an older vehicle. But how long would that vehicle last? How long would it be before you have to carry it to the mechanic shop, compared to a more recent vehicle which has the latest safety features and technology, and most importantly, in its pristine conditions inside and out? Madam President, there are some who are complaining that the charge is too high. But Madam President, I assure you, the intention for this charge imposed on importing used motor vehicles is only done for the right purposes. This is done to discourage the people so that they can reduce the pollution coming from these used vehicles. The income from this levy can even be used to combat other sources of pollution and help some projects such as geothermal and solar energy. But Madam President, the pollution coming from these vehicles is carbon dioxide. To be frank, carbon dioxide is an important greenhouse gas that helps to trap heat in our atmosphere. Our planet will be cold and uninhabitable without it. But Madam President, the temperature is rising and it's affecting all of us, especially our children. Madam President, this hits me hard as the Minister of Education because the students, our children, our future are being affected by this heat and rise in temperature. Madam President, teachers can't even take their students outside for fresh air and have outside class because of this heat. The problem is also within the classroom. According to criteria, and I quote, they might find it difficult to concentrate and their head could feel foggy. Not only that, but your kids can also feel sleepy or tired when exposed to carbon dioxide. They will not perform or feel their best at school breathing in extra carbon dioxide, end quote. Madam President, for anyone who is opposing this charge may have the same common and typical argument that the levy is high and too much money. Well, I have one question for the people on the opposition side. What is too much money when it benefits the one that we serve, and more importantly, our future? In closing, to quote the famous song, We Are the World, just know, there's a choice we are making. We are saving our own lives. It's true, we'll make a better day, just you and me. May it please you, Madam President.
I recognize Honorable Member, Shadow Minister of Education.
Good morning, Madam President, colleagues, and invited guests. Disturbing news has risen out of the island of Nevis, wanting to amend the Nevis Environmental Levy Ordinance, not for the better, but for the worse. They want to increase tax on imported motor vehicles from $3,500 between 2 to 4 years after manufacture date to $5,000, and 4 years or more from $5,000 to $7,500. Madam President, the members on the other side claim that these amendments are needed because they want to live a sustainable and peaceful life. They say they want to lower Nevis' carbon emission footprint and to secure a better future for our young people. But luckily for you, the people of Nevis, you have an opposition that looks out for your best interests and ensures that the members on the other side do not leave this lovely island in a worse position when they leave office, so that proper leaders can take charge. That is why I am here to give reasons why amendments to this ordinance should not be allowed. In my view, Madam President, there are more concerns in Nevis, such as dealing with the cleanup of our environment and focusing more on renewable energy, that requires much more urgent attention. Increasing the price of importing motor vehicles is absolutely ridiculous when vehicles sold locally are extremely expensive. It's as if the members opposite do not want to see poor people and middle-income people strive to improve their lives. So only the rich must be able to afford to bring vehicles into Nevis. Increasing the tax from $3,500 between 2 to 4 years after manufacture date to $5,000, and 4 years or more from $5,000 to $7,500 is like a big offense to the poor man. And that is only one part, Madam President, we have to pay to import motor vehicles. Madam President, haven't we suffered enough with working with the same salary for years, paying these bills, taking care of households? People are trying to help themselves to get a vehicle so they can support their families because of the outrageous prices of companies in Nevis that sells vehicles. And it seems as though that the government wants to take all the money out of our pockets. According to the members opposite, Madam President, these amendments are needed because too many old vehicles are abandoned in Nevis. So, you mean you, the people of Nevis, elected these people to come up with solutions to solve the problems in Nevis. And instead of finding solutions to the issue of all vehicles being abandoned around the island because there's no proper dump site, this so-called government wants to punish the lower and middle classes by making it harder for them to bring in vehicles. What about creating a proper dump site while at the same time creating jobs for people who can work at that very dump site? What about creating recycling facilities and educating the public on recycling techniques so that people can find ways to use all parts of their vehicles instead of abandoning them? What about training some of our young people in the area of mechanical engineering so that we can have more experts on the island to teach us what to look for when buying cars overseas and how to properly maintain our vehicles so they can last longer? No. Instead of finding solutions, the first bright idea of they who were elected to serve is to find ways to make life harder for poor people. And then they will turn around and ask the same people to vote for them. Nonsense. Madam President, as the Shadow Minister of Education, I see the current challenges as an opportunity to develop the skills of our young people, whether it be mechanical engineering, or project management, or recycling techniques. So where the members opposite see a reason to make things harder on poor people, I see opportunities for our young people. Madam President, the members opposite also claim that the amendments are also needed because they want to lower the emission of carbon in Nevis. I believe the members opposite must either be confused or simply do not know what they are talking about. Because when I walk down Charlestown, I breathe fresh and clean air. And that's about the most populated part of Nevis.
Member, you have 1 more minute.
No one can honestly say that the air in Nevis is in any way compromised. In fact, compared to the developed countries in the world, Nevis carbon dioxide emissions is like 0 to none. Nada. If we want to help in reducing our carbon footprint, we need to strongly lean to use renewable energy. Nevis is a small island in the tropical zone. Madam President, just last week we experienced extreme heat and it's still hot. That means we receive a vast amount of sunlight. How about we reduce the import of oil used to supply electricity and use the wonderful sun that the Lord God Almighty provided for free? Madam President, as we can see, that the government is more concerned about money than the people of Nevis. This amendment should be abolished like slavery, and more focus should be placed on the cleanup of Nevis and moving from the traditional use of energy to the more sustainable and renewable use of energy. I thank you. May it please you, Madam President.
I recognize Honorable Member, Minister of Health.
Good morning, Madam President, my colleagues, members opposite, and persons in the gallery. Madam President, with your leave, I rise on a matter of urgency to lend solid support to the mover of the statutory rules and orders shortly entitled Nevis Environmental Levy Ordinance, Amendment of Schedule Order 2023. Madam President, I have observed for myself the ridiculous increase of second-hand vehicles into our pristine island. Although I do not dispute or doubt that these vehicles offer many personal benefits, we must carefully evaluate its downfalls, its drawbacks. This is why the bill being debated in this Honorable House has become necessary, Madam President. We must appreciate the point that all the vehicles give off more carbon dioxide is not an assumption or a frivolous statement, but rather a statement of fact. Robert D. Stevens, a holder of a first-class degree in biochemistry, and Stephen H. Cadle, a scientist versed in issues in environmental chemistry and total organic carbon, lend scientific and qualitative support to this matter at hand. After rigorous investigation and research on carbon monoxide emissions, they confirm, and I quote, by examining emissions as a function of moduli, it is clear that a majority of new vehicles emit very low levels of carbon dioxide, and that cars with older emission control technology contribute a disproportionate share of carbon dioxide emission, end quote. Having received assurance from trained professionals, we are better able to appreciate the fact that all the vehicles do in fact exhaust higher emissions of carbon dioxide. As Minister of Health and Social Services, I treat this as a matter of great importance, Madam President. Although it is arguably cheaper to import second-hand vehicles, we cannot take lightly the possible health implications that can be caused as a result. Not only do these older vehicles emit a higher level of carbon dioxide, it also exhausts dangerous pollutants such as carbon monoxide. Yusuf S.H. Naja, in an article entitled Gaseous Pollutants Formation and Their Harmful Effect on Health and Environment, penned these words, and I quote, carbon monoxide deprives the body from getting enough oxygen. At low levels, carbon monoxide decreases the amount of oxygen supplied to the brain and organs and muscles, slow body reactions and reflexes, and impairs judgment. It poses a serious threat to people with heart disease because of the fragile condition of the circulatory system, and to the fetuses because of the oxygen needs of the developing brain, end quote. It can be observed that this harmful exhaust can affect people of every sector of the society. That means all of us, Madam President, all of us in the society, you, me, members opposite, and my colleagues, even those in the gallery, can be affected, Madam President. With these possible health implications before us, Madam President, we cannot afford to neglect our health over a dollar value. We cannot afford to place a dollar value on the health of our citizens. Madam President, I understand that it's easier for the common man who wants to share in the luxury of being a car owner. I understand that importing 8 second-hand vehicles may be a cheaper alternative. However, does this justify its potential health risks? The need to save money has crippled the minds of our people, Madam President. Assuredly, these cost savings in the short run could potentially result in steep medical bills in the long run. Madam President,
One more minute.
how important is our health? Madam President, is our health not worth more than $5,000, perhaps $10,000 worth of savings? Madam President, not only does these vehicles pose a threat to our health, they also pose a threat to our environment. This could potentially increase pollution of the environment and cause a disruption in the Earth's climate. Madam President, I call on those opposite to help us preserve our environment and our human resource by supporting this bill to increase the environmental levy imposed under the Environmental Levy Ordinance. Madam President, I find it necessary to note that the intention of this amendment is simply to place a limit on the importation of these second-hand aged vehicles and not to completely stop its importation. I give a categorical assurance that an increase in this levy would cause a significant increase in the importation of such vehicles and serve as a successful deterrent of the importation of aged second-hand vehicles. Madam President, let us uphold the mantra: the wealth of a nation is the health of a nation. Madam President, having made what I hope is a compelling case, I wish this bill safe passage to this honorable House. May it please you, Madam President.
I recognize Honorable Member, Shadow Minister of Health.
A pleasant good morning to all. Madam President, climate change has been a dominant but controversial topic of discussion at conferences and forums all around the world as head of state tried to make decisions to deal with its effects. Seeking to address the carbon footprint of St. Kitts and Nevis, the government imposed an environmental levy via the Environmental Levy Ordinance on imported vehicles that are over 2 years of age. The government seeks to amend this act by now proposing that there is an increase in the levy on the importation of vehicles depending on their age. Madam President, honestly, I feel for the people of Nevis because this decision shows how short-sighted this government is and how incapable they are at finding workable solutions to the problems of climate change. Clearly, my friends on the other side have come up with what they believe is a solution without even considering our unique situation in Nevis. It aches my heart that a government that is supposed to be for the island of Nevis can suggest solutions that create more problems for the people of Nevis. Madam President, there is no one-size-fits-all to the approach of climate change. This is my basis for my strong opposition to increasing the environmental levy on the imported vehicles of 2 years or more. Firstly, Madam President, the members opposite have assumed that forcing people to import and drive new vehicles is a solution to the problem. However, this assumption is not only false, but ineffective. Madam President, if the members opposite had simply consulted experts or even done research on the issue, they would have realized that proper maintenance of your vehicle is more important than simply buying a new vehicle that you may not even be able to afford. According to the Department of Ecology for the state of Washington, in giving advice to controlling vehicle emissions, it was noted that, and I quote, regardless of what you drive, you can make sure that your vehicle runs as clean and efficiently as possible. Maintain your vehicle and keep it in good repair. Follow your owner's manual and make sure you schedule regular oil changes and other maintenance, end quote. So, Madam President, by increasing the levy on residents, what the members opposite are actually doing is increasing the cost of living for Nevisians. Does that sound like a government that cares about Nevisians and cares about creating a better Nevis? Madam President, as our elders say, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. It is obvious that what is needed is not newer cars, but better maintenance of the cars that are already here. Secondly, there was then the obvious disadvantage of placing an unnecessary financial burden on our people when the cost of living is already so high. Madam President, it seems that our government has forgotten that we just got out of a pandemic and that inflation is ongoing. As a result, the people of our nation are struggling. It's either they have forgotten, Madam President, or they are out of touch with reality as they earn big salaries and benefits. So they can't possibly relate to the poor man who is struggling to make ends meet, struggling to keep their business running, and just struggling financially in general. Let us not be ignorant to the reality that many of our citizens simply cannot afford new vehicles sold locally. Because of this, many individuals seek to import second-hand vehicles that have proven to be the more affordable options. Increasing the levy to import these cars will be unrealistic and simply inhumane.
Honorable Member, you have 1 more minute.
Madam President, it seems that this government is only here for the rich. So they are telling a man who can barely afford a second-hand car in the first place that he must go and buy a brand new car that's at least triple the cost of a used car. Madam President, as the young people say, make it make sense. Furthermore, Madam President, our Nevision people are smart. If the government raises the levy on imported older vehicles, do you know what people will do when they buy the new cars? They will keep them longer. So, the rise in levy on older vehicles will prove to have the opposite effect of what is intended, as many of the older cars being driven on our roads will be kept longer, as a newer replacement will be more expensive and unaffordable for many. Thirdly, Madam President, the approach of penalizing older vehicles and forcing people to buy new vehicles hurts us environmentally. This is because, sadly, the majority of automotive repair shops in our country are not equipped with the technology needed to properly maintain these new vehicles. Madam President, may I be granted an additional 2 minutes to complete my presentation?
The question is, the Honorable Member, Shadow Minister of Health, be awarded an extra 2 minutes. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Thank you. This is because, sadly, the majority of our automotive repair shops in our country are not equipped with the technology needed to properly maintain these new vehicles that are equipped with advanced computerized technology. Advanced training is needed to be familiar with the maintenance required. Therefore, when these new vehicles have a problem, the expected reduction in emissions is not achieved. I quote again from the Department of Ecology for the state of Washington. Newer vehicles have very complex emission controls to keep them running as clean as possible. If any of these controls are not functioning as designed, your vehicle will pollute more than it should. It is therefore better to allow vehicles to be imported that are easier and cheaper to maintain so that we can have a clean environment while not placing unnecessary financial burdens on our people. Madam President, we need not adopt a monkey see, monkey do approach to our situation without properly taking into consideration other very important factors that exist in our country. May it please you, Madam President.
I recognize Honorable Member, Minister of Communications.
Madam President, honorable members of the Assembly, invited guests, good day. And a good day it is as I rise in this House today to speak in favor of the proposed increase in the environmental levy on cars over a certain age. Our aim is to reduce air pollution on our beautiful island, and I believe that this is a necessary step for our country. Madam President, let me first start off by saying that our opposition seems to have the wrong idea about us, why we support the proposal. Honestly, I commend their spirit, if a little misguided, for this proposal targets not immediate benefits, but long-term sustainable results. As we all know, cars over 2 years of age produce more pollution, which increases exponentially with age, especially compared to newer models. And according to a report by the United Nations Environment Program titled Towards a Pollution-Free Caribbean, vehicular exhaust is the greatest source of air pollution in our region. The problem is right in our backyard. Madam President, this pollution not only has a negative impact on our environment, but also on the health of our citizens. Even the very water that we use daily is affected by the pollution. Gina McCarthy, administrator for the U.S. Environmental Health Protection Agency, said, and I quote, "At its core, the issue of a clean environment is a matter of public health," end quote. Madam President, not only that, but there are still more consequences of air pollution, such as increase in likelihood of natural disasters, as mentioned in Journal of Environmental Health Perspective. Now, some people would claim Nevis is not polluted and is perfectly fine, or there are bigger issues. But while Nevis may seem like an island untouched by pollution, it is slowly but surely changing. As the prominent environmental activist Robert Swan once said, and I quote, "The greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it," end quote. Well, Madam President, I say the greatest threat to our little island is the belief that someone will save it by starting the work that the people have elected us to do. Who here hasn't just been walking when a truck comes by and you choke on its exhaust? What would you propose we do about that? Will car maintenance fix that? By increasing the environmental levy on these cars, we can encourage individuals to replace their older, more polluting cars with newer, environmentally friendly models, promoting a cleaner, greener Nevis. Madam President, I understand that the members of the opposing bench will argue that this increase unfairly targets those who cannot afford to replace their older cars. However, I believe we have a responsibility to prioritize the health of our citizens and the environment over individual convenience. We can, however, mitigate the impact on low-income individuals by offering incentives for the purchase of electric or hybrid cars, which have significantly less of an environmental impact. Furthermore, Madam President, the revenue generated from this ordinance increase can be used to fund initiatives aimed at reducing pollution and promoting environmental sustainability. It will not be wasted. We can invest in public transport, bike lanes, green energy, solar panels, pedestrian-friendly infrastructure, and so much more. These will encourage individuals to use more environmentally friendly transport. But, Madam President, it doesn't just start or end with introducing these initiatives.
Honourable Member, you have 1 more minute.
We must promote environmental awareness among the public via use of radio, SKN News, or other media outlets. We can use these channels to educate our citizens about the significance of reducing air pollution and the benefits of sustainable transportation practice. We can advise them on the incentives available for purchasing newer, environmentally friendly cars and promote alternative modes of transport. To conclude, I urge all members of the Assembly to support the increase in the environmental levy tax. I urge you to support the health of our citizens and the environment. Madam President, I leave the podium with the question: would you rather prevent problems or deal with the aftermath? May it please you, Madam President.
I recognize Honourable Member, Shadow Minister of Communications.
Madam President, what is the intention? What is the intention of an increase in the environmental levy ordinance? There are already several pieces of legislation in place, one of which is the coastal levy, aimed to preserve and sustain our environment for future generations. Madam President, an increase to the levy ordinance is simply a guise on the environmentally sustainable practices to further tax the people of Nevis. Madam President, an amendment to this levy would result in additional revenue being deposited to the consolidated funds. But how would these additional funds be utilized? Madam President, where is the money going? Would it be used to benefit the people of Nevis, or would it be spent on meaningless projects? Madam President, we need accountability. Oh yes, we need answers. Madam President, new vehicles can cause more environmental harm than used vehicles. The government may argue and claim that new vehicles are better for the environment, but in fact, are they really? Buying a used vehicle reduces the level of carbon dioxide output in the environment. Used vehicles also impact the environment less than newer hybrid vehicles. New hybrid vehicles use lithium, lead-acid batteries that have a larger environmental impact than a used vehicle due to the toxic waste left behind by batteries and acid. Madam President, it is philosopher Plato who once said, "The worst form of injustice is pretended justice." And it is Martin Luther King Jr. who reminds us that injustice anywhere is indeed a threat to justice everywhere. But before I leave this podium, Madam President, hopefully, even at this 11th hour, the government can decide to revisit the legislation and deliver justice to the citizens who rely on the used vehicle market. And it is author Pierce Brown who reminds us a man cannot be freed by the same injustice that enslaved it. And may it please you, Madam President.
I recognize Honorable Member, Minister of Tourism.
Madam President, colleagues, members of the opposition, audience, good morning. As Minister of Tourism, I rise to propose for the amendment of the Environmental Levy Ordinance as it pertains to the importation of motor vehicles of a certain age into the Federation. I will be highlighting why this ordinance is beneficial, not only for my ministry, but for society as a whole. Tourism entails the business activity connected with providing accommodation services and entertainment for people who are visiting a place for pleasure. This encompasses areas such as hotel accommodations, tour guides, historical and cultural conservation, agro-tourism sites, festive activities, etc. We depend on the environment for our operations. It is on this backdrop that I believe that the foundation of tourism is capitalizing on the presentation of our environmental assets as an island. As such, it is an important mission to preserve our environment, as it is the essence of the island's pull factor. The amendment of the Environmental Levy Ordinance, as stated in the amendment of schedule, increases the cost imposed on used motor vehicles of a certain age, as older vehicles emit more CO2 pollutants than newly manufactured vehicles. Madam President, it is widely known how detrimental CO2 pollutants are to our environment, as they induce serious environmental damages such as climate change, when the carbon dioxide in the environment warms the planet, causing a chain reaction of events, including the melting of glaciers and polar ice and the rise in sea levels, which chips away at our beaches. Now, Madam President, upon hearing the premise of the amendment of the ordinance at face value, the opposing side may argue that island living is already expensive as it is, and the living expenses of our people are at stake here. But I argue that ensuring our environment is healthy and livable and securing the longevity of our nation's people should be our top priority. Let's create a scenario, everyone. We continue to ignore the climate crisis, and it continues to accumulate until it reaches a turning point where turmoil ensues. As a result, hurricanes as we know it start to get stronger and even stronger than before from the temperature increase until we get hit, leaving more lives in absolute ruin and our infrastructure decimated. More specifically for the tourism sector, our island's tourist attractions, the core of our operations. In St. Kitts and Nevis, we have been blessed to not experience hurricanes as dangerous as those in other islands. But if we continue to turn a blind eye to this issue, Madam President, the imminent destruction would leave our island's tourism industry in jeopardy. And that, Madam President, is my utmost concern. Look at it from the lens of a tourist scoping out our federation as their next vacation spot. Who wants to spend their vacation on an island where the impending doom of a hurricane that spells disaster may befall them? Additionally, the rise in sea levels as a result of climate change would desecrate our coastal areas, which, may I remind everyone here, comprises of the very hotels and beaches that cover a substantial portion of our tourism industry today. And if that wasn't enough, Madam President, other environmental ailments face us as a result of CO2 emissions on top of climate change, one of which is air pollution. May we recall the days of COVID-19 where the complaints of wearing a mask all day were at a sky high. For some countries, that is their daily reality due to the presence of higher concentrations of CO2 emissions from vehicles and industrial activity, causing severe air pollution linked to respiratory health complications and even cancer. The clean air we breathe in the Federation today is a privilege only we can protect. Should we want our serene paradise to turn into a toxic wasteland, declining the health of our population, ultimately inducing copious amounts of stress on our healthcare system, I implore you, Madam President, to consider these factors. In addition to the amendment, Madam President, the government is also working on projects that would further aid in the fight against climate change. For example, the Caribbean Development Bank has granted $17 million in financing the switch to geothermal energy in Nevis, which aims to help reduce the cost of electricity and the amount of carbon emissions. This is a next step to improving the cost of living within the island, allowing individuals to better allocate their earnings to essential resources instead of paying high electricity bills like a measly top-up month by month, and avoid the awkward question at the clerk, is this all you're paying this month? The curtains of the infamous Nevis bill are soon to come to a close. Madam President, as I conclude, if we do not act within reason, not only will the tourism industry suffer, but island life as we know it will dissipate right before our very eyes. To prevent these imminent dooms from coming upon us, it is imperative that we do our part. As such, the amendment to the ordinance should be considered. The ordinance would act as a deterrent to importing older vehicles in the prospect of reducing our carbon emissions, in addition to the prospective switch to geothermal energy, subsequently reducing our carbon footprint and helping the fight against climate change, our planet's main impending danger, and other environmental detriments. Madam President, I stand resolute in the stance of amending the Environmental Levy Ordinance for the betterment of our island and our environment. May it please you, Madam President.
I recognize Honorable Member, Shadow Minister of Tourism.
Madam President, colleagues, and invited guests, a pleasant good morning. Madam President, I rise to make a contribution to this ordinance shortly entitled the Environmental Levy Ordinance. Madam President, I am in strong opposition to this bill that is before the Assembly, mainly because it will not do any good for the people of Nevis. And more importantly, as the Shadow Minister of Tourism, I wish to highlight that this bill would undermine the progress that we anticipate in the tourism sector. Being the largest sector of our economy means that it creates the most employment and supports the largest number of small businesses. Madam President, when I look at the economic data for Nevis, we see that tourism represents 90% of our economy. Therefore, we must do everything in our power to prevent any harm from the tourism sector. Introducing this new law will not only damage the tourism sector, but cause even greater hardship in Nevis. Madam President, let me now turn my attention to some of the important economic activities in the tourism sector. Let's take, for example, taxi drivers, tour operators. They need vehicles to operate their businesses. Unfortunately, not all of them will be able to purchase a new vehicle, hence buying a used vehicle. Some of them will not be able to afford an extra $3,500, hence they will go out of business. Madam President, I can speak about our small hoteliers and restaurateurs who cannot survive without the means of transportation. Again, this bill imposes a significant tax increase for their businesses. Already our hoteliers and restaurateurs are paying their fair taxes, and imposing this new tax would only further burden them and make it difficult for their businesses to thrive. Madam President, we know that there is an important linkage between farming, fishing, and tourism. Visitors come to Nevis to enjoy our local cuisines. Farming and fishing provide the food that feeds our visitors. This bill makes it more difficult for farmers and fishers to purchase of fruits, vegetables, and fish. Hence, the tourism sector will be undermined. Tourists will no longer get the abundant, fresh, local produce that they have become accustomed to. This is detrimental to the economy of Nevis. Madam President, I can also make mention of the braiders, masseurs, and vendors who all ply their trade in the tourism sector, on the beaches or even on the roadsides. Many of these people wish to purchase a vehicle to improve their businesses. This new environmental levy ordinance put a vehicle out of their reach. Madam President, I have laid out the reasons why this environmental levy bill will mean disaster for the tourism sector and the economy of Nevis as a whole. I wish to warn the government to reconsider passing this law so that tourism can continue to thrive and the government can continue to meet its obligations with the share of taxes it receives from the tourism sector. Madam President, I will vote nay on this bill, and I encourage all members of this assembly to do the same. May it please you, Madam President.
I recognize Honorable Member, Minister of Youth and Sports.
Good morning, Madam President, and a pleasant good morning to all those who are here today in this honorable House. Madam President, we the honorable members have gathered here today to address the order to amend the Nevis Environmental Levy Ordinance. It is expected that this amendment proposed by we the government will discourage the importation of cars beyond a certain age, as it was observed that these vehicles are emitting more carbon dioxide than newly manufactured vehicles. This proposed amendment has shown that it can be beneficial to a small developing country like St. Kitts and Nevis. Madam President, as the Minister of Youth and Sports, I have an obligation to advocate to what would be in best interest of our youth people on this island and to strengthen the cause of our athletes. Our government is a government of vision and foresight. We can already see the many negative effects that would befall our young people and athletes if we don't take the difficult steps now. Madam President, I am certain that the many individuals here today in this respectable House have read or heard about the negative effects of air pollutants. A typical passenger vehicle emits about 4.6 metric tons of carbon dioxide per year. Older vehicles excrete more carbon dioxide, and that is a fact not even the opposition can change. Pollutants from cars can cause a range of health problems for our youth and athletes, from allergies to skin irritation to heart disease to respiratory problems such as asthma. Pollutants can impair our athletes' endurance and their ability to focus due to bothersome and distracting respiratory symptoms. Sportspersons such as cyclists can be at an acute risk because they frequently breathe in exhaust fumes from passing vehicles. However, it would not only be the professional athletes at risk, but also amateurs, spectators, and officials. Madam President, how does this affect our youth, you may ask? Madam President, did you know that children breathe twice as quickly as adults and take in more air relative to their body weight? Upcoming child athletes may have to adapt to such conditions caused by the pollutants. Young people face a significantly diminished future as a direct result of climate crisis. Young people's lives will be threatened and they will face severely reduced health outcomes. The climate crisis will result in greater mortality and serious injury due to extreme weather. There will be an increased risk of contracting diseases, and the food supply would be significantly affected, resulting in food shortages and poor nutrition. Can you imagine all that carbon dioxide that is inhaled by such small human beings? The carbon dioxide emissions can affect them greatly in the long run. Madam President, among the world, human activities have raised the atmosphere's carbon dioxide by 50% in less than 200 years. How can our country reduce its carbon footprint if it is continuously contributing to global warming? The amendment of the Nevis Environmental Levy Ordinance will do the residents of this country no more harm than the pollutants from the environment. Madam President, our young people and our athletes will suffer greatly if this amendment is not fall through. Please, Madam President.
I recognize Honorable Member, Shadow Minister of Youth and Sports.
Pleasant good morning to all. Madam President, on the Commonwealth Day theme of 2023, Forging a Sustainable and Peaceful Common Future, it has been proposed that the levy be increased in order to reduce our carbon footprint, which is thought to be caused by older vehicles. I'd like to aid my colleagues in providing solid reasons as to why this should not be done. Madam President, climate change is and has been an important topic of discussion for a while now. Here in the Caribbean, as a small island, we too must play our role in mitigating its effects before it is too late. This very same argument has been tuned like a broken record by the government. But who is disagreeing? It is a known fact that carbon emissions, especially from vehicles, play a great role in warming the planet, thus causing climate change. As the Shadow Minister of Youth and Sports, I'd like to preface by saying these temperatures significantly affect the youth, especially as it pertains to sports. It is very difficult for a person to be finding the energy to be practicing and engaging in sports regularly with the rising temperatures of Nevis. Therefore, there are less persons who will be willing to participate, and the numbers will begin depleting. The youth are affected in all ways. The Minister of Education made mention of how it negatively impacts them, and it is true. I'm sure some of you guys have children, and you can imagine how this heat can tire and distract these students, which creates a difficult environment to learn in. In fact, I believe you have to be someone who lives under a rock to ignore this. It is a fact. The argument, however, is focused on the increase of the environmental levy, which I believe to be absurd and not necessary to be done. Madam President, the citizens of this country already face adversities or hardships because we lack the resources to support the lifestyles of our community. They are oftentimes forced to import all their needs or wants simply because our island does not have these items, or they view it as a cheaper alternative due to the high cost of living here. They would then have to struggle with importation and custom fees, but it is still viewed as a cheaper option. We cannot be insensitive to the needs of the people. As our government, you must of course think about how to protect them, but you must also be humane in your actions. As my colleague mentioned, should this be exclusive to the rich? They must be able to purchase their cars in order to travel. I believe that increasing this levy would deter some individuals, but the mass majority will be forced to pay this hefty price to meet their needs. Will money alter the effects of climate change, Madam President? Instead of increasing the environmental levy, I believe the plan of action should be to increase awareness. Although efforts have been made to do so in the past, it can be improved. I believe that there should be mandatory lessons on how to save our community through energy-saving practices whilst allowing them to engage in community cleanups where possible. Also, we should emphasize the slogan, reduce, reuse, and recycle in all parts of society in order to reduce our carbon emission, gas emissions, and our energy consumptions. This can be done through implementing a 3-bin recycling system in which garbage will be separated into compostable, recyclable, and trash. By encouraging businesses and persons who are able to install solar panels because it reduces energy consumptions, and by encouraging carpooling because it reduces carbon dioxide gas emissions. And another alternative to combat the rise in cars and the carbon dioxide gas emissions is by maybe creating a limit on the amount of cars an individual can purchase who is not a part of a business or without good reason. Madam President, being the Shadow Minister of Youth and Sports, I'd like to conclude by saying motivating the youth to engage.
One more minute.
Thank you. Motivating the youth to engage in sports and I'd like to conclude by saying motivating the youth to engage in sports can promote a healthier and active lifestyle and allow them to become more interested in the environment. In fact, reported by sustainability.com, from data of 122 countries, 76% of athletes are very concerned over climate change, 66% feel to be directly impacted by it, and 72% feel that it directly impacts athletes on a whole. Hence, I believe that increasing the environmental levy will not achieve the desired results sought by this community. Instead, we should approach it collaboratively, especially with the youth, in order to ensure our future remains stable, sustainable, and our sporting community continues to thrive. Madam President, may it please you.
I recognize Honorable Member, Minister of Agriculture.
Madam President, colleagues, members of the opposition, and invited guests, a pleasant good morning. Forging a sustainable and peaceful common future, the theme of Commonwealth Day 2023. A theme highlights and aim our small island of Nevis to strive towards sustainability and peace. Madam President, my fellow members of government and I have noticed that Nevisians are importing motor vehicles that are older. They may be doing so trying to save money and cut costs on transportation. However, Madam President, the little money that they save comes at the expense of our environment, specifically our natural, agricultural, and marine resources. Thus, we, the government of Nevis, have seen it fit to amend the Nevis Environmental Levy Ordinance to ensure our sustainability and peace. Against this backdrop, the main purposes of the amendments are to 1, reduce pollution in the environment, 2, improve our agricultural sector by providing clean air so that our plants and animals can thrive, and 3, encourage Nevisians to switch to cars that are more eco-friendly. Number 1, reduce pollution of the environment. Madam President, it is well studied and documented that motor vehicles such as cars and trucks are major contributors to the pollution of the environment. They emit nitrogen oxide, carbon monoxide, and particulate matter, which is microscopic liquids and solids, into the atmosphere, according to research done by the World Council. These gases contribute to climate change and are also considered greenhouse gases that contribute to global warming. The exhaust from motor vehicles produce these gases as they are in use. And of course, this is made worse when cars age and are made subject to wear and tear. However, Madam President, the opposition, as we've been hearing all morning, and of course will forever continue to hear, are ignoring the fact of the high pollution rates these older motor vehicles emit and are not, of course, in the best interest of Nevisians. Madam President, countries all around the world have taken measures to lessen their carbon footprint. For example, in Australia, all new vehicles sold must have their fuel consumption and CO2 emissions tested before they are sold in Australia, according to their Green Vehicle Guide. Let's take a quick look closer to home in Bermuda. If you're going to import a used car into Bermuda, it cannot be more than 6 months old, and you must be the car's first owner. Among the documents that are required for the importation of vehicles into Bermuda is an emission certificate. It is obvious that in Bermuda and in Australia, they have taken their environment very seriously. Maybe, just maybe, we in Nevis need to adopt such impactful measures. Why can't we make our efforts to lessen our carbon footprint and better our environment? Yes, We are a small country, and our impact on the world may not be large. However, the impact that we have on ourselves and our environment is large and currently is very negative. Madam President, the amendment to the ordinance of imposing a fee of $7,500 will lessen the importation of vehicles that hurt our environment, specifically our agricultural and marine sectors. We must improve our agricultural sector by providing clean air so that our plants and livestock can thrive. As a country coming out of a life-altering pandemic, it must be noted that in the COVID-19 pandemic, the country was placed on quarantine, something that was shared across the world. Movement was limited, and thus the use of motor vehicles dropped throughout our island. From this, it has been studied the positive impact the limited use of motor vehicles has on the environment. Quote, air pollutants like nitrogen dioxide and carbon monoxide were reduced in most regions during the pandemic lockdown phases, according to Dr. Yap from the Zion Liverpool University. With little dangerous gases in the air, of course, our air quality improved. This, of course, benefited the agricultural sector, as both our flora and fauna had better air quality to breathe in and thus strive. Madam President, as Minister of Agriculture, I must note that our country already faces the issue of not being able to meet the demands of our population in terms of livestock and meat production. Although we have had the help of the Ross University School of Veterinary Medicine in combating this problem, we ourselves are still able to help increase our production rates by taking steps to better the environment of our animals through air quality. Animals live a better life, a better quality of life, and are therefore able to reproduce more efficiently when their air is the best that it can be. The amendment to the ordinance would slowly but surely phase out motor vehicles that emit dangerous gases for newer vehicles that are following the trend of being electric and thus lessen those gases. A true win for our environment. Madam President, we are a country that's aiming towards self-sufficiency. And although there's clearly opposition towards the idea of self-sufficiency by people against the best interests of Nevisians, we still want and need to produce crops and livestock to lessen our food import. Yet, when a problem is introduced that threatens this aim or may cripple it, there is argument as to why we should have this problem remain. We must encourage Nevisians to switch to cars that are eco-friendly. Madam President, there's a well-known principle in law called the polluter pays principle. The idea is that whoever is responsible for polluting the environment...
Your time is up.
Madam President, may I be given 2 minutes to finish my presentation?
The question is, Honorable Member, Minister of Agriculture, be given an extra 2 minutes. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
We must encourage Nevisians to switch to cars that are eco-friendly. Madam President, there is a well-known principle in law called the polluter pays principle. The idea is whoever is responsible for polluting the environment should pay to remedy or mitigate the damages caused by their pollution. This principle is a principle which this government plans to enforce in order to safeguard the environment for all Nevisians. The resources we have in agriculture, both flora and fauna, will then have a chance to strive and multiply efficiently. Therefore, each vehicle owner will play a role in the sustainable development of Nevis and protecting our environment for the benefit of future generations to come. The aim of the levy amendment is to push Nevisians in the right direction, to improve their country by buying and importing cars that could help maintain and better their natural, agricultural, and marine resources. How is that a problem? Madam President, I will tell you what the problem is. The carbon monoxide from these vehicles is a problem. Nitrogen dioxide is a problem. Particulate matter is a problem. Our flora and fauna suffering is a problem. Sustainability and peace are our aim. Yet when an amendment to the levy is introduced to help bring us sustainability, there is opposition to the amendment. Again, clearly against the best interest of Nevisians and our resources. Therefore, I strongly urge my fellow ministers of parliament to support the amendment to the environmental levy ordinance and let us make a step in the right direction to accomplish the goal for Commonwealth Day 2023 of sustainability and peace. May it please you, Madam President.
I recognize Honorable Member, Minister of Human Resources.
Good morning, Madam President, my fellow government members, members of opposition, and invited guests. My question is, How would the amendment of the environmental levy benefit the Ministry of Human Resources? The Ministry of Human Resources is mostly based on the amelioration of the Nevis community. My ministry, in relation to the amendment of the environmental levy, helps us to understand and acknowledge the benefits of this act to our people. There are 4 benefits of this amendment to the environmental levy I would like to address and expound on. These benefits are decreasing the carbon footprint of the country, investing collected funds from the environmental levy to the future needs of the country's communities, reduce the amount of air pollution for better air quality of our residents, and reduce the depletion of the ozone layer. Madam President, the first benefit of the amendment to my ministry is decreasing the carbon footprint of the country. A carbon footprint may be defined as the total amount of greenhouse gases, such as carbon dioxide and methane, which are generated by human actions. The contributions of the production of greenhouse gases made by humans is large. In our country, a major contributor is the emission of greenhouse gases from burning fossil fuels in the vehicles driven daily. Older vehicles generally emit a high amount of carbon dioxide pollutants into the atmosphere, which causes climate change at a more rapid rate, whereas newer vehicles emit a smaller amount of carbon dioxide pollutants, which may not drastically contribute to climate change. Madam President, a second benefit is to use collected funds from the environmental levy to invest in the future needs of our country's communities. A preferable investment could be renewable energy such as solar energy, wind energy, and geothermal energy. These alternatives can be considered to slowly lessen the use of fossil fuels, which when burned releases carbon dioxide pollutants. The shift to renewable energy would help save money by lessening the importation of fossil fuels. Another investment could be to provide seeds and a small compensation for planting vegetation. By encouraging people to grow more vegetation, this could help to decrease the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, because photosynthesis, which is the process by which plants use carbon dioxide to make their own food, is the only known way that carbon dioxide is naturally removed from the atmosphere efficiently. Madam President, a third benefit is that it helps to reduce the amount of air pollution in the country for better air quality for our residents. Do you remember the year of 2020 when the coronavirus entered our country's borders? The discomfort of the mask we wore was all you will hear from the residents. But in places like China, where the air pollution levels are at its peak due to the mass production of toxic gases entering the environment from their many vehicles, the wearing of masks are sometimes mandatory. Unlike in India, where the air pollution is so horrible, it causes acid rain and thick clouds, which makes it nearly impossible to breathe fresh air. And 27% of this pollution is caused by vehicles, so face masks in these conditions would be also mandatory. The amendment would help the people to save the future of our country from conditions which could cause decrease in tourism and cause many health problems such as
Remember, you have 1 more minute.
lung cancer, which can cause unaffordable medical bills. The environmental levy was set in place to prevent or divert people from importing vehicles that could pave way to the destruction of our island. Madam President, a fourth benefit is to reduce the depletion of the Earth's ozone layer. Over the years, scientists have concluded that the use of older vehicles has contributed significantly to global warming. I am sure that we have noticed the increase in temperatures in our country, which could cause stronger and more destructive hurricanes. The depletion of the ozone layer can also cause famine and drought. These problems could lead to the ruin of our island by not having enough resources to provide the people with. The environmental levy helps us to uncover small changes we can make to ensure that the residents of Nevis face less devastating natural disasters, the reduction in exposure to rising temperatures, and to prevent the loss of the country's agricultural and basic resources. Madam President, in conclusion, the benefits of the amendment for the environmental levy are quite reasonable to the Ministry of Human Resources, which I would hope to see implemented in the future to ensure the well-being and preservation of our island Nevis. May I please you, Madam President?
Adjournment. I recognize Honorable Member, Minister of Youth and Sports.
I rise to move that this honorable House be adjourned, sign and die.
I recognize Honorable Member, Minister of Communications.
I rise to second the motion that this honorable House be adjourned, signed I.
The question is that this Honorable House be adjourned, signed I. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. This Honorable House stands adjourned.
Please be seated.
First and foremost, please allow me to say thank you to God Almighty, our Creator and Controller of this universe. Without Him, this mock sitting wouldn't have been possible, as He is our source of life. Permit me at this time as well to acknowledge Honorable Eric Evelyn, Minister of the Opposition in the National Assembly and Deputy Premier, Honorable Alexis Jeffers, Member of the Opposition in the National Assembly, Honorable Michelle Slack, President of the Nevis Island Assembly, other members of the Cabinet in the Nevis Island Administration. Honorable Dr. Janice Daniel Hodge, Member of the Opposition in the Nevis Island Assembly, Mr. Farrell Smitten, former President of the Nevis Island Assembly. Permanent secretaries, heads of department, directors of the Nevis Island Administration, our observers, Ms. Wanda Nisbet Brown and Mr. Chris Librad, both are attorneys at law, and Ms. Shanella Joseph, Education Officer in the Ministry of Education in the Nevis Island Assembly. Specially invited guests, parents, guardians, friends, and well-wishers of our youth parliamentarians. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. It is with great honor that I say thank you to our new contingent of youth parliamentarians. I'm quite certain that everyone here can join me in saying that it was indeed a vigorous and thought-provoking debate. They all performed well, they were all outstanding, and I think it's only fitting if I ask everyone to stand and give them a standing ovation for the performance that was displayed here this morning. Thank you, thank you. A certificate of participation will be presented to each youth parliamentarian who took part in today's mock sitting of the Nevis Island Assembly as a way to demonstrate our gratitude for their hard work and dedication in making today's mock sitting a success. So at this time, I would like to ask Honorable Michelle Slack, President of the Nevis Island Assembly, to join me in this process. After the conclusion of the distribution of the certificates of participation, Chris Liebert, one of the observers, would give us an overview of the mock sitting. This would also be followed by brief remarks by the President of this Honorable House, Honorable Michelle Slack. The certificate reads, in recognition of participation in the CPA Nevis Island branch mock sitting of the Nevis Island Assembly to commemorate Commonwealth Day 2023, theme, forging a sustainable and peaceful common future at this Nevis Island Assembly Chambers on the 4th of May, 2023, and it is signed by the President of the CPA Nevis Island branch, Honorable Michelle John S. Slack, and Ms. Myra A. Williams, Secretary of the CPA Nevis Island branch. Okay. We'll start with Ms. Dewese Stanley. Rishikesh Shrinivasan. Michaeli Lewis. Steve Walters, Jr. Shania Taylor. Talia Philip. Kelana Parry. Michaela Maynard. Shani Taylor. Charlene Myers. Michael Maloney. Alane Kati. Junice Eaton. Abini Brandy. Brianna Farrell.
A pleasant afternoon to all of you who decided to grace us with your presence today as we conducted this exercise. And permit me to adopt the protocol so ably established by the Clerk of the Assembly, Ms. Myra Williams, and also to acknowledge the presence of the honorable members of this House. We thank you for coming. Permit me also to place on record the apologies from the Deputy Governor General, Her Honor, Mrs. Hailita Liburd, the Premier, the Honorable Mark Brantley, as well as the Honorable Troy Liburd, who were unable to attend today due to other commitments and prior engagements. I will be brief. Firstly, I just want to express a high note of commendation to our cohort of youth parliamentarians for an excellent mock sitting this morning. They were all very practical, professional, and they were well prepared. And throughout our rehearsal sessions, they were all very cooperative. And I think we should be very proud of them for their dedication and for the evidence displayed today of a competent generation of leaders to come. I use the expression dedicated and committed because this is examination period for most of them. And despite that, they put in the work, they took the time, and they've come here and they did very well. So we are grateful to them and the appearance for that. As you would have heard, today's sitting was done in commemoration of Commonwealth Day 2023 under the theme, Forging a Sustainable and Peaceful Common Future. The theme highlights the commitment of the Commonwealth to support the promotion of peace, prosperity, and sustainability, especially through climate action to secure a better future for young people and to improve the lives of all Commonwealth citizens. The bill debated was therefore for the purpose of bringing awareness to the issues which ought to be a part of the focus of leaders across the Commonwealth in light of the current global trends regarding climate change. And as you would have gleaned, dialogue is necessary, consideration is necessary, and balance is necessary. And let me just state, for the avoidance of doubt, that there was no consultation with the Cabinet of Ministers with respect to their legislative agenda. And the draft bill debated today, so far as we are aware, there is no such intention on the part of the Nevis Island administration to increase the environmental levy in relation to the importation of vehicles. The bill was prepared, the orders were prepared for this purpose, our mock sitting today. Now, I also want to use this opportunity to express gratitude to several persons who assisted in making today's exercise a success. God makes all things possible, and He allowed a smooth running of the program today, so we are very grateful to Him.
Of course, to our youth parliamentarians and their parents, who, as I said earlier, put in the time and effort to make today's sitting worthwhile. We literally could not have done it without you all, and so we are grateful. Yes, a round of applause is in order. I also want to thank our esteemed panel of assessors, Ms. Rhonda Nisbet-Brown, Justice of the Peace, Ms. Chinella Joseph, and Mr. Chris Liebert for their presence and invaluable contribution today. You will hear from them following me. Thank you also to Ms. Myra Williams, Clerk of the Nevis Island Assembly, who was so instrumental in organizing the logistics, making sure the House was prepared, reaching out to all the various persons and entities involved, preparing our programs and certificates, and the list goes on. Thank you very much for your hard work. Thank you also to Ms. Daquila Maynard, Junior Clerk in the Office of the Legislature, for assisting generally and for assisting in the designing of the participation certificates and today. Thank you very much. Behind the scenes, we also had some workers who we would just want to acknowledge. We are grateful to Mr. John Prentice for providing transportation following our rehearsal sessions, Ms. Sherilyn Liebert and Mr. Alistair Thompson for ensuring adequate seating arrangements, to Inspector Alonzo Carty of the Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force for ensuring adequate parking arrangements. Thank you to the Nevis Newscast for carrying a live broadcast of today's sitting on their various platforms. And we wish to express gratitude to the Nevis Island Administration for supporting today's event, to the permanent secretaries who provided information in relation to their ministries and portfolios for our assistance, and who have graciously agreed, the NIA, who has graciously agreed to provide lunch for the youth parliamentarians and our assessors following this event. We are also truly grateful to all of you for coming, and I do want to express my apologies if there is someone I should have specifically mentioned, but inadvertently overlooked. It was not intentional. I am grateful to all of you for coming. I am grateful for the support, and I am grateful for a successful sitting. Once again, thank you, and thank you for coming.
Thank you, Madam President. And with your permission, I seek to adopt the protocol that was so ably established. I must say that it gives me great pleasure to make my maiden speech here in the House of Assembly. I must say that my fellow judges and I, or fellow assessors and I, were rather intrigued by the level of presentation, the level of debate that we witnessed here today. And yes, you can give the participants a round of applause. I must say that it warmed my heart to see so many young persons present here today who have expressed an interest not only in parliamentary procedures but parliamentary debate. And I would love to see some of these young persons on this very stage in the not too distant future, helping to elevate the debate on issues of local and national importance. So I commend each of you for the work that you put in. It is quite evident that a lot of work went in behind the scenes, and it was, clearly evident here today. We generally found that the presentations were of a very high standard. We can tell that the presentations were well researched. A lot of the speakers seemed rather comfortable with their material. They looked rather seasoned, I must say. And I must say also that they were able to keep their presentations to a large extent within the allotted time frame, and I thought that was good. It is always good to prepare your presentations with your time limits in mind. However, we recognize that there were some weaknesses in some of the presentations, and with practice, further practice, those weaknesses can be tackled and overcome. I encourage each of you as speakers to be mindful of the pace at which you speak. You would have to remember that you're speaking not just to the camera or to Madam President, but you're also speaking to your colleagues on either side and members in the gallery. So be mindful of the pace at which you speak. Also be mindful of your volume and voice modulation. Be also mindful of your posture and the way you stand, and also the gestures that you use throughout your presentation. Ensure that you maintain a reasonable amount of eye contact and you use appropriate hand gestures where necessary. I would also encourage you to, I'm going to share a little tip that I learned in debating when I was back in sixth form many, many moons ago. And the tip is this: when you have a moot, or in this case, the amendment that is being discussed, and you're up to present on it, whether you are in favor or you are opposed to the moot that is on the table, I want you to ensure that your presentation is as logically developed as possible. So the tip is that you would state your points, explain your points, and support your points, and always try to link the points that you have raised to the subject matter that is being discussed. We noticed a little weakness in some of the presentations where the presenter, although they were able to give a very informative discussion about climate change and climate adaptation, we saw a struggle in linking the presentation back to the amendment that is being discussed. So I think that is something that you should be mindful of, that you should always remember that there's a particular subject matter that is on the table, and whatever you present should always be linked to that subject matter, so that at the end of the day, the persons who are sitting either in opposition or in government can say, okay, yes, this is the amendment, these are clearly the reasons why we support it, or these are the reasons why it is not supported. But always aim to link your presentations back to the subject matter that is up for debate. But with that said, I again would like to congratulate each of you for a job well done. I must say that the future looks bright, and I would really love to see some of you back here, maybe 10, 15, maybe 20 years from now, debating further issues. So thank you very much for having us. Thank you for the opportunity to witness the presentations, and I wish each of you the very best in your future endeavors. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. That brings us to the end of this morning's exercise. Once again, I am grateful to all of you for coming here and for spending your morning with us. I am going to ask the youth parliamentarians as well as the members of the House, the actual members of the House, to remain so that we can take some photos before we leave for lunch. Thank you again and enjoy the rest of your day.